Assalamu alaikum Tom. Wa alaikum salam. Wa alaikum.
Karachi looked as though the city had been turned inside out by the heat. The road shimmered like broken glass, the walls glowed under the sun, and even the air felt heavy as if it had forgotten how to rise. Then, in the middle of that burning street, people began lining up at Amina's tea stall, not for tea, but for shade, water, and a moment to breathe. A little boy in a dusty school uniform squinted up at her and asked, "Baji, is there any cool air left?" Amina looked from his cracked lips to the growing line of tired faces, and something tightened in her chest. Her small stall, with its crooked roof and dented kettle, was no longer just a place to sell tea. It had become the only soft corner in a hard, burning city, and everyone standing there seemed to know it. Amina was the kind of woman who knew every face that passed her corner. She knew the laborers with dust on their sleeves and soreness in their backs, the rickshaw drivers with tired smiles and quiet jokes, the children from the school nearby who bought biscuits after class, and the neighbors who came for tea and a little gossip before going home. Her stall was small, 2 stools, a metal kettle, a blue awning faded almost white by the sun, but it held a warm place in the neighborhood. And behind the counter, tucked beneath a sack of sugar, she kept a blue crate that nobody paid much attention to, water bottles, salt packets, a battery fan, and a power bank wrapped in cloth. She had started storing them after one brutal summer when a man fainted 3 stalls away and everyone stood helpless, waiting for water that came too late. Since then, Amina had promised herself this corner would never be empty in a crisis. She had no grand title, no siren, and no official badge, only a quiet habit of preparing before danger arrived, and every summer she checked her crate before the heatwave came again. As the afternoon deepened, Karachi felt as if a metal lid had been slammed over it. The streets shimmered white, the asphalt softened underfoot, and every wall seemed to throw the sun back into people's faces. Electricity failed in blocks across the neighborhood, and with each blackout, the air grew more desperate. Workers still walked, shoulders bent, because missing a shift meant missing dinner. A mother pulled her small child by the hand and whispered for him to keep moving. An old man crossed the road in tiny steps, pausing every few meters, as if the heat had stitched weight into his bones. At Amina's stall, the line widened. She poured water into cracked cups, shifted the canopy to catch the narrowest strip of shade, and told people to sit where the breeze could reach them. Her battery fan rattled, slowed, then complained with a weak whir, as though it too were tired of fighting the heat. Each sip she gave away felt like a promise she might not be able to keep. Yet the danger was clear now. Heat did not strike everyone equally. It hunted those who worked outside, those who lived without power, and those whose bodies had no escape from the sun. In the distance, sirens wailed once and then vanished, swallowed by the glare, and Amina felt the stall's shade shrinking by the minute, as if the whole street were holding its breath, waiting for someone to fall. Inside that long line, each person carried a different story of exposure, and Amina could see it in the way they stood. A construction worker held his helmet under one arm and stared at the ground, his lips dry, telling himself he could not stop because the half-built tower would not wait. A rickshaw driver wiped sweat from his eyes and glanced at the meter, knowing even a short rest meant less money for rice. Farther back, an older woman from a top-floor apartment leaned against a post and breathed in short, careful pulls. Her building's power was out since noon, and the rooms above her were turning into ovens. Near the curb, a teenage boy helped his father sell fruit, both of them blinking hard against the light, their crates of mangoes softening beside the road. Amina watched them one by one and felt the weight of the city settle in her hands. Then she checked her phone for a message from her son, who worked across town, but the screen stayed blank, and the silence made her stomach tighten. It was in that uneasy pause that her neighbor Malik frowned at the queue and muttered, "You can't save the whole city with tea." Amina did not answer. Instead, she looked at the faces around her and kept pouring, because some lives were already standing too close to the fire, and above them the sun burned on, unbothered and absolute. Then it happened so fast that the whole street seemed to blink. A teenage boy near the end of the line swayed, tried to laugh it off, and then folded to the ground as if his knees had simply given up on him. For 1 second, nobody spoke. Even the fan sounded too loud. Amina dropped the kettle, rushed forward, and with 2 men lifted him into the deepest shade beside the stall. She loosened his collar, wiped his face with a damp cloth, and told everyone to stop crowding around him. "Small sips," she said, pressing a cup to his lips. "Not too much, not too fast." Her hands moved quickly to the blue crate, water, salt packets, the battery fan, the folded cloths she had kept for emergencies. Everything she had stored in silence now came alive in her palms. A woman from the queue tore open an ice packet from her bag and pressed it near the boy's neck. Malik arrived with a piece of cardboard and began fanning as if his own breathing depended on it. A child ran to the corner shop for more water. And as the boy's breathing steadied, Amina saw another face in him, an older neighbor from years ago, collapsed by heat and gone before help arrived. That memory hit harder than the sun itself, because she had once watched a life slip away while people stood frozen, unsure what to do. Not this time, not here. The blue crate had been waiting for this moment, and the street at last began to breathe again.
And yet, even as the immediate danger eased, the fear did not disappear. It changed shape, becoming something quieter and more lasting, because everyone in the queue had just seen how quickly heat could turn a normal day into an emergency. Amina kept one hand near the boy's shoulder and the other on the cup in her hand, while the people around her shifted from panic to purpose. Malik knelt beside the stall and asked if he should run for more water. The old woman from the apartment building sat down carefully and began loosening the scarf around her neck. The construction worker reached into his pocket, pulled out a few coins, and quietly offered to pay for an extra bottle for anyone who needed it. Amina nodded, not because the money mattered most, but because the gesture did. In that moment, the stall was no longer one woman's effort against a city-sized disaster. It was becoming a shared space of response, and the people who had arrived, desperate and overheated, were starting to recognize one another as allies rather than strangers. And while the fan kept wobbling and the shade stayed small, the line did not feel quite as helpless anymore. By the time the worst wave passed, nobody looked at Amina's stall the same way again. A shopkeeper arrived with a bucket of ice. An old man returned with 2 umbrellas, one for the shade cloth and one for the children who kept coming back. A hardware owner lent a long charger so the battery fan could stay alive, and a laborer climbed onto a stool to tie the awning higher. What had been a tea corner became a cooling station, without anyone waiting for permission from the city to make it happen. People began repeating the advice they had just learned. Drink before thirst starts, rest in the shade, wet a cloth and place it on the neck, and check on elders who live alone. The queue itself changed shape, no longer a line of panic, but a circle of care. Amina moved from person to person, refilling cups, smiling at the children, and making sure no one stayed too long under the heat. Then a local health volunteer stopped beside her stall, looked at the organized crowd, and said quietly, "This is exactly how communities save themselves." Amina glanced at the blue crate beneath the counter and understood that preparedness was never about fear. It was about being ready to protect people when the sun turned cruel again. And because the neighborhood had learned that lesson together, the stall now felt larger than its walls, larger than its kettle, and larger than the one street corner where it stood. By evening, the heat finally loosened its grip on Karachi. The long line at Amina's stall had vanished, and the street, once bright with strain, now rested in a soft, tired quiet. Amina wiped the counter slowly, then glanced at the blue crate tucked beneath the stall, the water, the salt, the fan, the simple things that had carried the neighborhood through the day. The city was still vulnerable. The power could fail again tomorrow, and the sun would return with the next heat wave. But something had changed. People had learned to check on one another, to share shade, to notice when a face looked too pale or a child moved too slowly. Some had already promised to keep water at home, others to watch the elders on their block, and even Malik had said he would bring extra cardboard tomorrow in case the fan failed again. Amina thought disasters did not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes they came quietly, as heat, exhaustion, and neglect. She set a fresh cup of tea on the counter and watched steam rise into the cooling air, no longer a warning, but a small sign of life, endurance, and the strength people find when they prepare together.